It's time! It's time! You like that? You like that? Woo!
It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Dutts. I'm your host, Mains, my colleague in the danger zone in Rainford. It's Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
Probably one of the few podcasts who didn't do a damn thing during NFL free agency week one.
Awesome.
That's how you set yourself apart, my friend.
It is, yeah. It is. Oh, can I be the 50 millionth person to discuss Odell Beckham Jr. and Dave Gettleman, please?
Yeah. I think Matt and Evan pretty much boxed that topic off, haven't they? So.
Well, according to Mike Francesa and Dave Gettleman, I believe they have. World famous. If you want to listen to Mike, to Matt especially, listen to our previous episode where Matt is on it. Was it literally hours after he'd done the giant skewering?
Hours after he spoke to us, the next morning, their time, they recorded with Evan.
Amazing.
And then that's when it came. So I got the scoop that was going, because I made a comment about the podcast they did last year about the Browns, and I said you should do one about the Giants, and then literally Matt said, "Well, tomorrow I'm talking to Evan about this podcast," and I was like, "I'm guessing you didn't just get the idea from me."
I look forward to the Washington version next year, and by looking forward, I mean I don't want to listen to it. Dutton, we're not talking news, but we like talking to people during the off season, and we like talking to people so much that we have 2 interviews this week. Firstly, NFL UK royalty, Neil. We talk to a lot of people from the States. We don't talk to many people from the UK. So when you get the chance to talk to the one, the only, Nat Coombs, host of the NFL Show podcast, you've got to take that opportunity. Nat will be coming up first. We then also have the brilliant Mark Schofield, quarterback scribe inside the Pylon and Pro Football Weekly, amongst other things, to talk, ironically enough, Neil, about quarterbacks.
One of our teams may need one.
One of our teams has needed one, possibly for 40 years, and in that time won 3 Super Bowls. But that's a different conversation. So screw you. So that's it, Neil. Lot of interviews. So let's just get straight onto it, and let's go and talk to, as I said, NFL UK royalty, Mr. Nat Coombs. Neil, so as I mentioned on the intro, we speak to quite a few people from the US on the show, obviously, but it's very rare we get anyone from the UK side of NFL. But not only have we got someone from the UK side of NFL, we've got NFL UK royalty, Neil, host of the NFL Show podcast, Talk Sport expert, BBC NFL coverage, and Mike Carson's tag team partner. It's Mr. Nat Coombs. Hi, Nat.
Oh, well, welcome. Hey, fellas. How you doing?
We are good. Hope you are good.
We've often looked at me and Carson have often. Sorry, let's get straight in it. But I love this tag team partner thing because people are often using WWE analogies with me and Carson. And I actually got one earlier on today that somebody called Will Thomas, shout out to Will, I'm sure he listens to your show as well, suggested that for all you old school WWE fans out there, that I am like a Kim Chi, who apparently was Kamala's handler and manager in sort of late 80s WWE. And the implication being that Carson is Kamala, I think.
That's basically suggesting that Mike can only be controlled by one human, and if you're not there, he'll just run riot across NFL space, I guess.
Exactly. So I like Will Thomas is our current winner of that tag team WWE comparison. But yeah, sorry for crashing your intro.
No, I don't think that's a title. I don't think anyone's winning. I think Will's absolutely nailed that one.
Yeah,
nailed that one.
You're gonna struggle.
Speaking of crashing intros, I remember like the third or fourth show I ever did with Carlson. So we started out working together on Channel 5 for those hardcore fans with a long memory. So I replaced Colin Murray in 2007. That was my first season when I was a young whippersnapper and very new to live television, shall we say. But, you know, things worked well. We got on well. But there were a few bumps in the road, including when Carlson crashed my intro to the show. I think it was my third or fourth ever show. I would do the intro to the show, right? And he just started talking over it after about 4 seconds, which is something I constantly remind him of. So that was a special moment early on in our partnership.
My first real memory of Mike, I'd say, I've spoken to him about this on the Twitter. It was when he used to do the Channel 5. It was way many years ago.
Yeah.
So it was before even Colin Murray was doing it. But I think it was with Jonathan or Mark, someone I can't remember his name.
Mark Webster, probably.
Mark Webster, yeah. And it was the Jeff George song.
Yeah.
Now I have tried YouTube. I have tried typing it into the internet. It doesn't exist out there. This impromptu, rendition of "Glory, Glory, Hallelujah" that Mike did. And it was absolutely captivating audio. How I wish I could hear it again.
Oh, we've got to try, and we're going to revive Ask Mike for the pod due to popular demand. So that's coming back on our pod next season. And so maybe I can get Carlson to do a rendition of that for you. That's at some point. Yeah, we'll work on that. I'll make a note.
I'm going to be honest. The way this has gone, I'm now going to scrap my first question. I'm going to change it. Because I'm now tremendously interested in that. In how do you interview or put your CV in to become the person who does the show at 2:00 in the morning with Mike Carlson on Channel 5?
It's a very good question, and one I haven't quite worked out yet even now. So, well, I mean, I kind of made a decision that I wanted to present. I'd started off writing and comedy and doing live stand-up. So I kind of cut my teeth with the live stuff for 4 or 5 years doing stand-up, which is something I always feel kind of a bit awkward about talking about because, like many things, you've got to do it for a long time to really consider yourself, proper. And I guess I did do all right with it early on. So like I got signed by an agent. I was doing 20-minute shows that I was being paid for, in big clubs. So telly spots and stuff. So I guess I had got to a place, but it's a little bit like I did well in college, but never really made it to the NFL. That's how I feel about it. Because I realized fairly early on, I liked the performing side of it and I enjoyed it. It's not like I didn't, but I knew it wasn't, and I'm not being self-deprecating. I knew I wasn't good enough to be, to get to the very, very top. And it didn't feel right, but it got me into the mix essentially. And I had a long, hard, think about, well, what do I want to do? And it was presenting and sports presenting I've always loved. So I changed agents and I found somebody who was prepared for me to kind of start at the bottom there and work up. And that's what I did. So I just did any work I could pretty much, and just took whatever opportunities and, didn't blink. And then I got a shot. So I'd worked with the production company that back in the day made the NFL show for Channel 5 called Sunset and Vine, who are a big sports company. I'd done a few jobs with them and the job came up and they said, we've worked with you, we like you. What do you feel about NFL? And I said, are you kidding me? Because I was that, as I'm sure you guys and most of your listeners are, that geeky kid at school that, had First Down newspaper when everyone else had Match and Shoot. So yeah, it was a lucky break in that respect that the right job came up at the right time and I knew the production company. So, but then I figured the flip side of that is all those open mic nights across the country where I, was often dying on my ass to 8 people staring at me aggressively, that I figure, well, I paid my dues to to get here. So that's how I ended up with that particular job, knowing I wanted to be a sportsman. And you know what, like I say, the first season was pretty bumpy, and because I just didn't really have a clue what I was doing with live presenting back then, some would say now. And but within the first 30 seconds of doing it, even though internally I was terrified and thinking, oh, what am I doing? I'm just messing this up. This is awful. I had this fundamental feeling, right, this is it. This is what I want to do. This is what I've been looking for. So I just knew straight away, hosting, anchoring, live, this is what I want to do. So that's how I ended up at 3 a.m. talking about The Wire with Mike Carlson.
I've got the parallels, though, Nat. Rich Eisen, I believe, did stand-up comedy.
Yes, he did. Yeah, he did. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Early on. So, if there's a career path to follow, you could argue that Rich's isn't a terrible one.
Oh, big time. I mean, huge fan of the Eisen. And I think if I remember rightly from his book, or at least something I read, he was, equally indifferent or mediocre when it came to stand up. So yeah, no, I love Eisen. He's and you can tell, that is his background. I think just in terms of his style of delivery, I think anyway. I think he's great. I'm a big fan of his.
Ridiculously dry human being.
Yeah, yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Speaking of dry, we have to go into a rather less pleasant subject. Well, it depends actually on your viewpoint. Obviously, from what we've seen just from podcasts and presenting, it seems that if you want to be any type of somebody in the NFL UK, you have to have supported the Miami Dolphins. There's yourself, there's Handsome Hank, obviously, and there's Neil Reynolds. So we come to the Dolphins. What are your thoughts? Because obviously, any team, long ago days have passed since any team signing. Ryan Fitzpatrick really has cause for excitement for the signing. Are you on board with the plan? Do you think there's a plan, or do you think literally it's just we'll just keep? Well, we've seen Washington a bit, a perennial clown show. Sorry, mates. We've seen the Giants are trying to cut into our act now. We need to do something to keep the hilarity alive.
I love it. Yeah, I mean that is. That is quite possible. What I love about it is, and Dolphins fans will sympathise, considering I picked the team, and I guess many did because naively, short-sightedly, I thought this is going to be a hell of a ride. Look at this Cavalier, because I was the Marino Marx brothers. That was my generation as a kid, turning on this strange sport on telly and thinking, what is this? And they weren't the best team then, you remember, but they would. I would argue the most exciting, or at least amongst the most exciting, would often be in wild shootouts and, didn't really care too much about defense because they had Marino and the Marx brothers. So you figured, well, this is decent. It's going to be an exciting ride. Of course, it has been. If the recent Dolphins were a coach, they would be Jeff Fisher. It's just this sort of perennial 7-9, 8-8. Purgatory and mediocrity, and so Fitz tackles that head on. I mean, he's I think the diametric opposite of that. He's of course completely explosive shootout style quarterback. His whole career trajectory is representative of inconsistency and wild peaks and troughs, and he's of course one of the more flamboyant characters in the league, which makes for great circus around it. So for all of those reasons, I'm completely for the Fitz move.
Do you see it as organic tanking? Nah. Do you see? I don't know. In terms of college, there's a certain left-handed quarterback from Alabama, and also Justin Herbert from Oregon. Do you see this as some kind of no? Really, we're trying to win, but we're actually not.
Yeah, I mean it's a good question. How premeditated and conscious and indeed justifiable is that? Because I think any team that is whichever sport, certainly in terms of American sports, there are parallels here with baseball for sure, that you think, okay, we are not realistically going to contend with this roster of players, and we're not going to be able to manufacture any fast or quick changes that are going to change that trajectory. So what's wrong with thinking, okay, so what do we need to do to be contenders in a few years within the parameters of the system we play in, which is the worst teams are rewarded with the best players, and we can get value for key players by dealing them to teams that are contenders at the moment and get, long-term value. So is that tanking? Quite conceivably. Where is the line really? I mean, I think if you are putting out a team that isn't competitive at all, that is a disrespectful to the fans that are paying the money. You've got to find a balance between, all right, we've got to be competitive each week and at least we've got a chance of winning a game. But if you're thinking, well, the decisions I'm making here mean we'll probably go 6-10 or 5-11, but we've got a better chance next season of making, or 2 seasons of making the playoffs, I think that's fair enough. I really do. I don't have an issue with it.
If you
it comes
wear
back
out
to
the logic, go on, Dalton.
I just think it comes back to the 1972, I think it was the Eagles. It was the year that O.J. Simpson was going to be the number 1 pick, and
right.
The Eagles won a meaningless game at the end of the season, which meant they missed out on getting him, which meant that OJ went to Buffalo, became a superstar, became a Hollywood icon, then murdered his wife allegedly, and then got defended by the Kardashians' dad. So basically, what I'm saying is, it's the Eagles' fault we have the Kardashians.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's no arguments on that. And for those who are new to the NFL, and you heard Nat say things like successful Miami Dolphins teams, it did happen. My dad is also a Miami Dolphins fan.
Oh, good man.
And I'm just gonna go from, I'd say the NFL probably started UK around, I don't know, late 80s, early 90s. So we're going to say playoff appearances: 1990, 1992, 1994, 1995, 1997, 1998, 1999, 2000, 2001. So I don't know what happened in 2001. I can't remember. Someone joined the AFC East. It escapes me. But since then it's been 2008 and 2016. I'm not laughing.
Great 2008 season, the Cleo Lemon season.
Exactly.
I think as well, though, Nat, it's a similar thing for me for the other type of football. The first year I really started getting interested in our football, it was the year after my granddad died, and he was the last male member of my family who supported Sheffield Wednesday. So the first year that I supported them, they got to 2 cup finals, and I thought, this is great, this is going to be absolutely awesome. And 27 years later.
So what is that, the sort of Ron Atkinson Wednesday era?
No, it was Trevor Francis.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Chris Waddle's first season.
Ah, yeah, okay. David Hurst, that era?
That's the one, yeah. If
ever he was a hell of a player, David Hurst.
He was a wonderful player, he had a wonderful left foot, but if there was ever a footballer who you thought, the second you retire, you'll be 30 stone within 5 minutes, it was David Hurst.
I'd say Andy Reid, but he was already 30 stone when he was playing on it. So,
he was also already there. Now we're coming up to the draft, and there's a lot of teams that are intriguing people. So I guess our question to you is there a team other than the Dolphins who you're like, I'm really interested in what they are going to do?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious answer is the Cardinals with this whole Kyler Murray situation, right? Which we recorded an episode of our pod today, and there was a really good question about this relating to whether there is a sensible argument for the Cardinals to hang on to Rosen at the moment, because it's not, obviously it's a hit financially, but not that much. And actually Ed Mallion was on the show today. Ed, he's a regular on our show and the sports editor of the Independent and big NFL guy. And he was saying that makes a lot of sense, because if they draft Murray, then dealing Josh Rosen now is crazyville, because his stock's going to be low, because he can't be that good if they've got Kyler Murray. Whereas hang on to him for a little while, and when it's panic buy time, which a team almost always has every season, then you're going to get a lot of value for him. And so that is intriguing. I mean, and people say, well, why on earth would they? I mean, how it's this ridiculous. They've only just signed Rosen, but this is the thing with any sport, but certainly in the NFL, this is the problem you have when you don't have any attempt at consistency or stability. If you have this situation, then of course people are going to come in and want their own guys, and certainly at the quarterback position, that's the most acute. I think you see that. So it wouldn't surprise me if they don't want him anymore. But it's a question of whether they hang on to him or deal him. And it'd be interesting to see what they do there.
It's as I noticed. It's the Cardinals last year. What the Cardinals did quarterback last year was, people say, that the art of comedy is dying, but what they did from Cardinal, signing Sam Bradford to stupid money, then signing Mike Glennon, then drafting Josh Rosen, then not starting Josh Rosen, and then putting him behind a porous offensive line with no playmakers, and all of a sudden be surprised that he wasn't very good.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Maybe a quarterback in the history of the league that has been definitively good in their first season. I mean, or even Peyton Manning. There's not a single quarterback that you could say categorically, well, that was I'm really sure about that performance this season. And so to write Josh Rosen off after, as you quite eloquently described, that shower around him last season, I mean, is crazy. But I do get that Kyler Murray is a fundamentally different player, and if that's what the new regime want, then what are you going to do?
Moving on, obviously, to later in the season, obviously, we've had free agency. We'll have the draft soon. What are your thoughts on the games that we will have in London this year, now based on the teams? We knew that who the teams were going to be, but now there's been a few signings, there's been a bit of change. Do those games look even more enticing for you as a fan and also as a producer of content regarding the sport?
Yeah, I mean, the Raiders are the obvious one there, right? It's interesting being around them this year, and Dutz, we spoke about this on the Talk Sport coverage, that I was really struck with the atmosphere in the camp, and because of what I do, I've been around quite a lot of different teams, and particularly in London because I cover the London games, and you do really get a sense of, particularly when you think about the time that the teams come over, you get a real sense of where they're at, and most of the time it is quite representative about what you're seeing on the field. In other words, the Seahawks at the time when they came over, and I was there with an entire facility. And for listeners who aren't aware, when these teams come over, they get put up in a swanky 5-star country golfing hotel, essentially, and all the practice and the media ops are all conducted around there. So it's quite surreal that you're sort of sitting in a rose garden talking to Tyler Lockett as Pete Carroll and 7 assistants bound past at 1,000 miles an hour. But that's exactly what happened. And there was a complete energy and positivity and stability around the Seahawks. You just felt it was tangible, everything they were doing. And so it's no surprise they had a fairly decent season, and certainly a better season, I think, than many people thought they would. The Raiders, on the other hand, were utterly dysfunctional. I had one of the most awkward interviews I've ever done with Amari Cooper, which made a lot of sense about 7 days later. And he was perfectly nice, incidentally. He wasn't being difficult. It was just his eyes. He just looked lost. It was. Why am I here? It was just painful, and it made a huge amount of sense. The Raiders started their press conference about 10 minutes earlier than they were meant to. This is Gruden's press conference, which just completely screws over all the media that's scrabbling around, trying to get their camera set up. I mean, the whole thing was just a shambles. So it's no surprise you then saw the performance that you did at Wembley. However, in the space of a few months, they're now probably the most exciting or at least among the most exciting teams coming over, I think. What do you guys think about the whole Gruden Raiders situation?
That someone's paid them $100 million for 10 years, and that sounds like the best job ever. I also
Vegas. Don't forget Vegas.
Yeah, and in Vegas, yeah. I also love the idea that the head of NFL coverage on ESPN as a pundit, quote unquote, is now in charge of head of drafts for NFL. It's like a thought experiment. Do you know what I mean? Let's get two guys off. I know the football people, but let's get two guys off TV and see how it goes. I also find the Raiders really weird because, like, when you listen to stories, they're they seem to spend a load of money but have no cash. They're a really bizarre team in that sense. So, I wish the Las Vegas Raiders all the luck in the world. I am not fully convinced it's going to work, though.
I'm personally as well. I saw a report that it was, Gruden won't draft this type of player. Someone was saying it on Twitter, and then someone responded with, yeah, but Mayock's calling the shots. And I literally nearly wet myself laughing at the thought that John Gruden is going to let anyone come in and tell him what to do on his Raiders, even if it is Mike Mayock, who obviously, I wish he'd put out a mock draft this year because it'd be, it would be revealing. But there's not a chance in hell he's going in and telling John Gruden this is what we're doing, and Gruden's not going to go, great story, thanks very much.
I love the great Bill Simmons, who I'm a huge fan of and has been a big influence on me. Really, he has a great idea about the Raiders in Vegas, that all their games should kick off at midnight, which I think is absolutely brilliant. I think they should. Do you think Gruden's gonna rock up at some backstreet casino at 3 a.m. some nights. You reckon it wouldn't be at the major ones. It wouldn't be at the Wynn or something, but you'd see him at some sleazy back downtown casino.
I hadn't thought of it now, but now I can't think of anything else.
As it's funny, like, and I know they're different sports, but on the Bill Simmons thing, like Jalen Rose was on Bill a lot and used to talk about like when he went to different cities as a basketball player, and he'd be like, "Oh, I used to love going to Atlanta or Toronto or whatever," which basically meant he just got smashed and met a load of girls, went to a strip club, did stuff he should never have done, but like then played basketball the next day, and like the thought of 8 weeks, like this week. The Atlanta Falcons are in Vegas. Oh, that's going to go well. Do you know what I mean? There's just these teams who are going to rock up in Vegas. And like the Raiders are kind of used to it because they're there all the time. So it's
I like it. It's a great home field advantage.
Exactly. It's like not quite a novelty for them. But like, you know, teams in the NFC are like, we get to go here once every 8 years to play these guys. So we are going to make the most of it.
We're going to go big. I love it. That's a great theory. The Raiders' home field advantage will become the strongest when they're in Vegas. That is genius.
You did a lot. You were host of the BBC coverage of the London games, Nat. But then controversially replaced by Mark Chappers Chapman of 5 Live fame for the Super Bowl. So does this make you the Carson Wentz of the BBC NFL coverage?
Oh, I like it. Well, a correction and clarification there, to be fair, to Chappers. He was presenting the Super Bowl back in the day when it was with the BBC before it moved to Channel 4, which is, of course, when I took it over. So
we don't know Mark, though. We don't know Mark, and we know you. So, you know, we don't necessarily need to be fair unless he wants to come on the show, of course.
Fair enough. You should get us both on, and we can square off. No, he's a top guy, and he's a brilliant presenter, and does it well. And, you know, look, I would be bullshitting you if I said, I'm fine with not doing the Super Bowl, because of course I want to do that's what I do. But, you know, that's the way this game works. And I was doing it for Talk Sport. So it was a pretty good compromise. And, you know, as you say, I've been able to do the London games for a number of years, and that is super special. So you got to be pragmatic about it and certainly not too precious about it, and not too negative. I think this business is, as it probably seems, crazy and ridiculous, and most importantly of all, it is temporary. Much like sport, actually, much like, you know, playing for a team. You got to. And I've talked to OC and Jason and other players that I've worked with. You know, you've got to enjoy it while you can, because before you know it, it's going to be over, and there'll be someone else in your seat. So, but I will take the Carson Wentz. I like that a lot. So thank you for I take it as a mild compliment.
I'm an Eagles fan, obviously, so it's a compliment from me. But it's a compliment from an Eagles fan, but also it does mean you might have to have red hair.
Yeah, I will just dye it red in a kind of an
homage.
Yeah, an homage, Christopher Nolan Batman style, red out of the bottle.
Will you? Is it a similar schedule for you this year, Nat, or do you not yet know?
Yeah, so it looks. I mean, these things, actually, NFL's strange how, compared to other sports, that often last minute things get sorted out. And you know, the rights are the key to it already. So, they sign the league, that is like any sports organization, signs a deal, does a deal with a network for a fixed period of time. So that's why things moved from Channel 4 when they did, because we were on a 3-year deal there and it finished, and it all looked very positive. I think everybody assumed it was coming back, and the ratings were pretty strong. And if you remember, we had me and Vern were doing a highlight show, and the London games were on, and everything was good. But at the last minute, it felt like deal didn't get done, and so things moved. And anyway, to answer your question, yeah, I think so. I think it'll be Talk Sport on Sundays, and I'll be doing the London games. But who knows? Anything could change last minute. But so far, it seems that way. Yeah.
And obviously, say once you've been doing the London games, you're presenting for Talk Sport during the week as well. The second season of the NFL show pod with Nat Coombs, given its full title. You've already hinted that, going to bring back Ask Mike. What else is in store in season 2?
Well, it's we've really enjoyed the first season. So we had, as well as the live coverage on Talk Sport, we had a weekly show as well, which you were on a number of times, of course, Dutz, and that ran on Talk Sport 2 for a couple of years, and then, as we've just been talking about, things change, and they just changed their direction. So all the specialist shows, which the NFL was one, just got binned one day. That's decisions are made like this, and that's the way the cookie crumbles. So I had a decision to make, really, and Talk Sport were very cool about it, because I said, look, if I go off and do this independently, you comfortable with that? And I'm still going to anchor your stuff. Yeah, we're fine. We're good. So that's what we did. So the starting point was, do we do the show just like it was on TalkSport 2? And we being, so I make it through, I have my media agency and a company called Noah, who are brilliant producers who are specialists in documentaries in particular. So they made the Bobby Robson documentary recently, which if you haven't seen, you should. It's a wonderful piece of work, and a great documentary about Steve McQueen and Le Mans, and just a group I admire a lot. And a number of guys that I worked with over the years in different places, producers, ended up there, which is a really good sign. People are really rated. And one of them was a guy called Pete Thomas, who was our producer back in the day on Channel 4. And he had said, look, if we ever get the chance, let's do something together. So I went to them and said, look, let's do something together. Let's do a version of the show, but let's make it different. So a lot of similar things to the old radio show, Carlson and Greg Rosenthal and Paolo and Ed and brilliant contributors. But at the same time, thinking it's a pod, and let's experiment a bit in this space. And you guys know all about that. And I think what was also key to us was the building a community, looking at this long term, and not trying to make a fast buck, and thinking let's just roll with this for a bit. And we definitely didn't want to make another version of Americanage, which we had a great run with and loved. And but that you can't. It would have just been, I think, odd to try and repeat that. And we might do a comeback tour when we need the cash, and B, we're sort of aging, and it's just a pale imitation of what we used to do there. But I think we wanted a different type of show. So we ended up with a pod, but also quite a good social media following. So this year, incredibly long-winded answer, we're going to do more of the same, but more being the operative word. So we're going to go to 3 episodes a week. We are going to do a lot more videos. So we went out to the Super Bowl, and our sponsors were terrific in releasing extra budget for us to do that. I was going to be out there anyway doing other things, but for the pod guys to come out, and we shot a film every day, and gave us loads of ideas. We came back from that really, really excited about what we can do. So we're adding a lot more video to the mix next season as well. And like I say, stuff that will roll out on the pod, stuff that will roll out on social, and lots of extra bits on the latter. At the NFL Show Pod is how you follow it on Facebook. We're on Twitter and Insta. And fantasy, fellas, is something we are definitely going to be introducing. And let's just say we might be a million miles away from some of the voices that you might hear on the show next season.
Maid will do a wonderful job.
That'll be fantastic. I just need to do prep. Slash.
No, we don't worry about that on our show.
No. If you've seen our main drafts in fantasy, you'll know he doesn't either.
Yeah. You saying that last year's Lev Bell first pick didn't go very well then?
Oh no,
it's been better.
We've all been there.
Well, Nat, thanks a lot for your time as always. As you said, at Nat Coombs, NFL Show Pod, and we look forward to season 2 coming out very soon.
Oh, thanks, fellas. Absolute pleasure, man. Anytime. It's always good to catch up, and congrats on everything you're doing as well. Keep that rolling.
Thanks, Nat.
And Neil, that was a brilliant Nat Coombs there, hitting us up with some excellent NFL UK knowledge, and I think making sure that you're free nights during the regular season, which is awesome news.
Indeed. I say, I've been a guest of Nat's on countless occasions over the last couple of years. It was nice to finally return the favour and have him on chatting to us.
Awesome, Neil. Absolutely. Really good guest, and top gent. I like the way he thought that he'd be an excellent Carson Wentz as well.
Well, yeah.
Before we get on with the Mark Schofield interview, we just got a little bit of a public service announcement, which we were asked to do, rightfully so, from our friend Dave Downey, who, if you are aware, is head honcho, I guess, on the Blue Room pod. For those Everton fans amongst the listeners, definitely worth a listen. And during the season, definitely worth a listen to the Sport and Digest section, as me and Neil will be on it, hopefully. So Dave asked us to drop a quick note into the pod, which is cool. So on Friday the 26th of May, there's going to be a special charity football match taking place at Prescott Cables to remember their former player Jack Riding. Jack tragically passed away last year after playing football and had a cardiac arrest. He was just 18 years old. Prescott Cables and a selection of Merseyside's past and present sports stars will be raising funds in memory. Entrance fee for Prescott Cables is just £2 on the night. And for more information, just head to Prescott Cables' website or all of their social media outlets. So Neil, now we're going to speak to the brilliant Mark Schofield to talk a lot about quarterbacks and I guess about his Patriots as well. And joining us now on Waxing the Lyrical Main and Dut is the brilliant Mark Schofield, quarterback scribe, Inside the Pylon and Pro Football Weekly expert, amongst other things. Mark, how are we today?
I'm doing fantastic, gentlemen. Paul, Neil, always great to be with you guys. Great to be back here, and excited to talk some QBs with you.
I guess we have to start. If we're going to start QBs, there's only one place to start, and that's with Kyler Murray. And I guess the question, I have two questions on Murray, and my first one is last year, obviously Baker Mayfield came out of the same system in a Big 12 offense, and then was a success in the NFL. I think that's the best way to describe it. Prior to that, Big 12 quarterbacks had been avoid like the plague, do not touch kind of ideas. Does Mayfield's success, especially in the Lincoln Riley system, assist Murray in any way?
I think it does, Paul, because when you were looking at Kyler Murray, you were looking at him as an outlier to begin with. Obviously, there's the size profile. When he comes into the combine, he hits the 5'10 mark. He hits the 200-pound mark. And so you could say, yes, he's still an outlier from a physical profile standpoint, but it's the Russell Wilson-type outlier. So it makes people feel a little bit better. But then there's, of course, the offensive system. And for years, Paul, we've been told that, air raid quarterbacks don't work out in the NFL. The system isn't conducive to running a pro-style offense. But what we've seen over the past couple of years is that you could take that sort of idea and throw it out the window, because the way the NFL works right now is that you have to get your rookie quarterback on that rookie deal, maximize that window. So there's no more this waiting for 3 years while they develop in your system. You get them on the field and you build around them and you make that run during that 5-year window when they're cheap. Look at 7 of the 12 playoff teams last year had quarterbacks on their rookie deals, including obviously Philly. Yes, Wentz was hurt, but still, and I did a piece for Pro Football Weekly in their draft magazine looking at this idea, talked to a bunch of people around the league, Matt Bowen and others, and they basically said, look, the idea of the developing your quarterback is gone. And so this idea that we can't run air raid systems, that's kind of gone as a result, because if you get a quarterback from that system and you're going to draft him early and play him early, well, you better run that system. And so we're seeing mesh concept and all these air raid type of designs being used in the NFL. And you look at Baker Mayfield, they're running some of the stuff he was running, obviously, with Lincoln Riley. And so with Cliff Kingsbury going to Arizona, there's this idea that they're going to do something similar. And even if Arizona doesn't draft him at 1, you're still going to see Murray come off the board early because of what he can do as a playmaker. And as a result, this idea that we can't run air raid offenses, well, you better, because that's what he's going to be best at early in his career. And so, because of that, I think Baker has opened some doors and opened some eyes. People will feel more comfortable with a Kyler Murray. And because of the sheer economics of it, teams are going to take that chance because the system will work. We've seen it. And this is the best guy that runs that system, best quarterback in this draft for many people. So you go and you run that system and you make it work and maximize that window during his rookie deal.
See, I've asked you in the past, Mark, this was a few years ago, obviously, but this was like, why wouldn't the air raid work in the NFL? And the answer you gave me was that it's not a big playbook. There's not there's not an awful lot of deception. Does that then become a question of, if you're going to run the air raid principle, the concepts, you just have to execute them at a high level?
I think, let me answer it two ways. One, Neil, the air raid has also expanded. The air raid hasn't been stagnant over the past couple of years. The air raid offense has taken on different elements as well. You look at one of the standard mesh concept plays. I mean, one of the standard air raid plays is that mesh concept, but those two crossing routes underneath, and you would see a couple of different variations of that. Now you're seeing mesh Y sit. You're seeing mesh Y sit H seam. You're seeing all these new variations of it because as defense is caught up with that, offenses have to adjust and adapt. And so when, for example, Kyler Murray is running that mesh concept, there's now 18 different variations of it. And you're seeing that work its way into the NFL as well. And so while the knock on the air raid in the past has been, Mike Leach has 6 plays, that playbook has expanded. In that Pro Football Weekly piece, I talked to Tony Racopi, who's a private quarterback coach. He's one of the passing instructors for the Man in Passing Academy. And he said, look, the air raid used to be a small, limited offense. Now it's big, it's expansive, it's more complex. You're seeing these quarterbacks like Gardner Minshew, for example, who just ran Mike Leach's system. He's running 4 or 5 progression reads on every single play. I talked to him down in Mobile for the Senior Bowl. He's like, look, that's what a lot of these college pro-style offenses are not doing. I'm going 5 reads on every single play, left to middle to right and back. That's going to get you ready to play in the NFL. And so the air raid has evolved as well to the point where these quarterbacks are trained now to make those full field progression reads. And it's going to help you whether you're running that system or any other offense. And so I think the idea is the air raid has evolved as well, and that's prepared some of these quarterbacks. A couple of years ago, air raid was kind of stagnant. Maybe we had a little bit of a mixed perception of it because, it takes us a while to figure it out. We get access to late playbooks and things like that. We're still working off a couple of years of old playbooks and things like that. But still, you look at the air raid now, it's getting these quarterbacks ready for it. So I think it's because the air raid has evolved. It's made these coaches more susceptible, more willing to run it. And also we're seeing these guys work their way up. Guys that have been running the air raid, guys that have been running spread stuff, they're now working from high school to college and now into the NFL. As these coaches move up the ranks, guys that have run it and believe in it, you're going to see more of it in the NFL as well.
I think because one of the things that, speaking about Kyler Murray, obviously the elephant in the room is, as I say, he's not 6'4", because I suspect if he was 6'4", there wouldn't even be a conversation.
Right.
One of the things that it was seen as a knock against him, and I know when John Elway was asked, he was actually mostly complimentary about him, but he spoke about him in the sense of, he's lovely, but he wouldn't be for us. And it's this idea of, he wouldn't be very good under centre. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the NFL it's a shotgun passing league now. It's not an under centre running league anymore, as much as John Elway would, I'm sure, love it to me.
Yeah, Neil. I mean, I think last year, if my numbers are right, 75% of all plays were run out of shotgun. I mean, it's a shotgun league. Now, for Elway in that offense, they want it to be similar to that Gary Kubiak under center stretch zone, boot action off of a type of offense. That's where Flacco was at his best when he was working with Gary Kubiak when he was the offensive coordinator in Baltimore. And so there is an element to that where maybe that's what they want to be. But it doesn't take long to adapt to life under center. Are there differences between being under center and a pistol or shotgun? Yeah. The eye angle is different, and this does matter. It is easier to see in the pre-snap phase because it's a different vantage point. When you're under center, you're closer to the line of scrimmage. Those corners are more peripheral now, and it's tougher to see if they're moving around, if they're coming or not, and things like that. It's easier to see them when you're in shotgun. It's easier to see the safeties. You have to change your eye angle, and you might not pick up things that are happening in the defensive front. But you can learn that, and that's more of a mental thing, not a physical thing. And whether you're 6'5" or 5'5", you're going to have to go through that adjustment. It's not a height thing. And look, Murray in his height, he was playing behind a tall offensive line, similar to Baker last year. And so I'm not too worried about his height. Yes, he has to create throwing lanes and stuff, but it could work. And so, I think Murray's height shouldn't be a limitation. I think, for Elway, he's fumbling around and trying to say, and it came out wrong more. I think it was more of a scheme thing where they do so much under center, and maybe he's not adept at that. But this is a shotgun league. 95% of the teams are going to be using the shotgun predominantly. Maybe the Broncos aren't. But Haskins was predominantly a shotgun quarterback too. Drew Lock was predominantly a shotgun quarterback. Most of these guys are shotgun quarterbacks. Is he saying now that maybe he's going to look at a Brett Rippon or Ryan Finley? Okay. But Kyler Murray, he can make it work too. And so I think he was getting at a scheme thing, but it's a shotgun league.
You mentioned Dwayne Haskins. I read a piece from the LA Times. Sam Farmer spoke with Greg Cosell, and there was pros and cons for all the 4 top quarterbacks. And I'm not a tape grinder. I don't have the skills. No one's taught me it
neither
yet.
am I.
But looking at the pros and cons for Dwayne Haskins, the one name that, just by reading what Greg was writing, the one name that sprung to mind was Jameis Winston. Is that a fair comparison from a talent point of view? Let's not judge what he does off the field. From a talent point of view or stylistic, is that a close comp?
I mean, I think there are some similarities. I mean, I just got down and write a piece for Matt Waldman, so talking about how much I hate doing comps because I'm bad at them. So I'm never the guy to ask. But I think when I see Haskins, I see more of a Josh Rosen in a sense. Because when I see Haskins, and what we liked about him was the mental side, or at least on the field. You could say like he had interest away from football, and that was a red flag for him. That's my big thing with Haskins. I love his mental approach. Whether it's in the pre-snap phase and adjusting the play calls and the protections in the post-snap phase, he's a much better natural manipulator with his eyes. He's much better at looking off safeties and linebackers and things like that. Throws with great anticipation. I love him from a mental standpoint. He's not a terrific athlete. Neither was Rosen. And so I think there are some similarities there where I think Haskins sometimes can miss plays is on throws downfield. Mechanics can get a little sloppy at times, lower body is in particular. And so, I think one of the strengths of Winston was sort of that vertical downfield passing game, which is going to be a great marriage with him and Bruce Arians. Get yourself some Winston shares. I'll say that right now. But, again, I'm not great with comps. If you're a Dwayne Haskins guy, you're going to like the mental approach. And ultimately, the fascinating question that's going to be answered in this draft between Murray and Haskins is, are you a results person or are you a process person? And 9 times out of 10, when you study quarterbacks, I'm more of the process matters. I don't care about the result. I don't care about what happens on a given play. I want to see the quarterback have a crisp, well thought out process that gets him to that decision. And if the receiver drops it or whatever, I don't care. I want to see what happens when he gets to where that throw ends up and how he gets to that process. Murray makes you want to throw that out the window because with Murray, the results are so impressive and they might even outweigh the process. You look at a touchdown run he had against Army, for example. It was an all curls concept out of a 2-by-2 formation, and he's reading the inside curl to the left, and that's double covered. He comes to the one on the right. That receiver falls down. He starts to climb the pocket, and as he's moving to his right, that outside boundary curl on the right comes wide open. Any other quarterback, I want to see him throw that. Keep your eyes downfield, make that throw. It's 3rd and 7, move the chains. He tucks it and goes. He's got 2 linebackers that have the angle. He outruns them. The both safeties, they have the angle on them. He outruns them, and it's a touchdown run. And so where do you come down on that? Most other quarterbacks, I want them throwing that curl. But with Murray, the results are just so great that maybe you throw the process out the window. And so ultimately, whether you like Murray or Haskins, it might come down to how you answer that question. Which matters more? If you're a process person, you like Haskins. If you're a results person, you might like Murray more.
So you talked about a couple of other quarterbacks in that quote-unquote next tier. I think everyone believes that Murray and Haskins are going to go really high. But then there's other names, interesting people, maybe lower half of the first round or into the second. Drew Lock, Finley, Rippon, and oh my goodness, Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, yeah, the most vanilla name ever. I'm almost convinced he's not a quarterback with a name like that.
It's a Madden name. It's generated by
exactly
a
right.
computer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on those next tier? And are there any that you see could start regularly in the NFL for a period of time?
I mean, I think the next guy on most boards is Drew Lock, and you could see why the NFL likes him. He has a massive arm. Josh Allen-esque, maybe not on the same level, but close. The thing with Drew Lock is his evolution as a quarterback has been fascinating to watch because before Derek Dooley got there, the new offensive coordinator at Missouri, he was basically running Baylor's offense. A lot of go routes, a lot of slants, a lot of quick outs and hitches. It was basically everything was to the boundary, to the numbers and outside. With Dooley, they've done more over the middle of the field, but you can't live outside of the numbers in the NFL. You're going to have to attack the middle of the field. And you look at passing charts and spider charts or whatever you want for Locke, and you see not as many throws between the numbers and the hash marks as, say, a Brett Rippon, for example. And I literally just got done charting those two guys and putting it on graphs and trying to do fancy, nerdy stuff and realizing that I'm not as good as, say, the Josh Herzmeyers of the world, but still, you can get a sense of where they're throwing the ball. With Locke, one of the hesitations that I have with him is that arm strength can be a double-edged sword. If you've always had the overpowering arm, you don't need to make crisp reads. You don't need to make fast decisions. You don't need to throw with anticipation because you're going to get the ball there anyway. And so you can sort of wait to throw it. You can see it and then throw it. That might work in the SEC for the most part. It might not work on Sundays. And sometimes that will get you into trouble. I just got done doing a video for Waldman's site on Drew Lock, and you will see him hesitate, take his extra time, and he will still get into trouble. And the arm might bail him out, but it might not in the NFL. And so that's a concern I have with him. It's a concern that I still have with Josh Allen. As for Daniel Jones, I never want to foreclose the idea that a guy is going to pan out in the NFL. But you're hearing him maybe at 17 to the Giants now. Obviously, the Cutcliffe thing with, he coached the man-ins and there's the relationship there. I don't know about that. I see Daniel Jones, and in the right system, I see him like a workable West Coast type quarterback. He seems scheme limited to me. I thought the Senior Bowl week was a bad week for him because he was set up for success. He's being coached by Gruden, Mr. West Coast himself, and he struggled during that week. And so I have my hesitations with him. If you're telling me that he's going to come off the board, say at like 30, 32, maybe early in the second round, I'm fine with it. I'm not that convinced that he's a surefire thing when it comes to being an NFL quarterback. And so I'm a bit hesitant about Daniel Jones. Into that sort of next tier of guys, I still like Will Grier. I like the appropriate aggression. He's a bit of a wild card. He's a bit unorthodox, but you have to be aggressive when you're playing the position. He is that. Sometimes it doesn't look great. Mechanics can be all over the place at times, but he's a gamer. I love talking to him down at Mobile. Just seems to be a guy that just has that competitive toughness to him. So I like that about him. A name, though, that I keep coming back to, the guy that is my quarterback 4 in this group, is Brett Rippon, the kid from Boise State. And what's been fascinating, guys, is the dichotomy between how the NFL seems to view him and how sort of the draft evaluation community world, draft Twitter, whatever you want to call it, views him. I've got him in the top 5. Derek Clausen has him in the top 5. I know Kyle Krabs has him at like 6. But then you look at the NFL, he doesn't get an invite to the Senior Bowl. Greg Gabriel, who was a scouting director for the Bears for like 9-10 years in the Pro Football Weekly Draft Magazine, doesn't even mention him. And so it seems like the NFL might not like him for some reason, whether it's a hand size, whether it's arm strength, something else. Draft Twitter seems to love him. Then he goes to the combine, and whatever you want to say about the RPMs and the radar gun, throws at 59 miles per hour. Now, I still think you take that with a massive grain of salt, but he's checking some boxes along the way. And I'll say this for him. If you're a believer in the Parcells rules, it's much harder to satisfy those because you need a certain amount of starts and wins and things like that. Guys that leave early can't check those boxes. Rippon hits all 7. Joe Marino over the Draft Network put all the quarterbacks under the Parcells rules microscope. It was Rippon, it was Finley that check all 7 boxes. And so if you like those, there are still teams that do. That's why I think New England is a team to watch when it comes to either Rippon or Finley. I think they still value that experience. I think either one of those quarterbacks would be a great fit in New England.
I love the idea. I love the idea of that name, Neil. That name just brings me back to glorious times as a young man watching a team in burgundy and gold actually playing attractive, unbelievable American football. A long, long, long time ago, Neil.
See, I didn't watch the NFL then. I've only your word that for that it actually happened.
It did happen. I watched it. We were awesome.
No, I mean you could see a scenario if Washington somehow drafts Brett Rippon where you get his uncle sitting in the nice, the booth up there or sitting in a nice little suite up there. You can imagine what FedEx would sound like if, Mark Rippon comes back home to see his nephew play, the ripping name. Imagine if he wears number 11. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps, and I don't even like the Redskins. So there you go.
I think it was just interesting, Mark, what you're saying about arm strength not being everything. I think it's a thing because in the past the difference between arm strength and arm talent. Because we all know Jay Cutler had arm strength, but and when you talk about Josh Allen, he could blow the lock off a door, but he couldn't hit the door. It's the I can throw this as hard as I can, but it's. I'll just throw this. We used to play five-a-side soccer, as it were, and Mains used to have this incredible habit of attracting people who thought they could just run through him.
Yeah.
Right.
As if and it's just, no, I'm actually here. I know I'm pasty white and look like a ghost, but I am actually here. It's with someone who's got, a bazooka like Josh Allen has, it's like, I'll just throw this through people. No, NFL defenders can catch it as well. And you're just going to get yourself into trouble.
Yeah, and, arm strength, and I think Greg Cosell's point is a very good one, Neil, in that arm strength is one factor of what we sort of look at in terms of the overall arm talent for a quarterback. I mean, Jeff George could throw the ball through a brick wall. Josh Allen could throw the ball through a brick wall. Well, which wall is he going to hit? The one he's aiming for or the one next to it? I mean, a fantastic moment from last year's Senior Bowl was when Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen were doing the same drill where they had this fenced netting type thing with a couple of different targets on it, and they're trying to hit different targets on it from 10 yards away. And Baker's hitting all of them, boom, 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 boom. And then Josh Allen steps up and he hit somebody in the first row. And he didn't even hit the net, let alone one of the targets. And, so arm strength will only get you so far. Then there's the, aspect of arm talent, which is do you have that sort of touch and that feel and that sense of, okay, well, I'm throwing this corner route and I've got an underneath trail defender. And so I can't throw this on a straight line. I got to drop it over that defender's head. And those are the areas where Josh Allen certainly struggled as a quarterback. And you can see some of that with, some like Tyree Jackson, for example. He has a little bit better feel and touch and things like that, but still a work in progress. And so, with arm strength, it can help you in a certain sense. Yeah. I mean, there are times where Josh Allen will be able to make some throws that a Brett Rippon or a Ryan Finley aren't going to be able to make, when you've got that sort of cover two look and you've got to squeeze it in between that safety that's coming over from the hash mark and that corner that's trying to squeeze that vertical route. Maybe Finley's not going to fit that in. But at the same time, if you're trying to fit that seam route over an underneath defender, Finley can do that. Rippon can do that. Allen might struggle. And ultimately, where are the bulk of throws made on a football field? They're 20 yards or less. And you don't need a rocket to deliver on those throws. You need more touch and feel for those defenders and where they're going to be. And so, arm strength, yes, it's a nice box to check, but it's not a mandatory one. You don't have to have a rocket arm. You just have to meet the sort of baseline threshold where you're not me out there throwing pop flies on a 5-yard out. You could at least deliver on the throws that an NFL quarterback needs to make.
One player, quarterback, he's not a rookie, but he is only still young in the NFL. I just wanted to talk to you about. It's a bit similar to, I suppose he's similar in the way to Josh Allen. Mitchell Trubisky. Now, at times last year, he looked really good. He put up great numbers, but if you actually watched him at times, it looked like a right-handed Tim Tebow.
Yeah, and Neil, for PFW last year, for Pro Football Weekly, I was their Trubisky guy. I wrote a piece about him after every single game. And so, look, I was a non-Bears fan watching every single Mitchell Trubisky throw. And there were times when it was a joy to watch, honestly, because you could see him starting to put it together. You could see him running Matt Nagy's offense and having success with it. There were other times when I reached for something that was a little bit stronger than water. Let's just put it that way, because he was struggling. And mechanics, you mentioned Tebow, were an issue with him, not so much with the upper body, but the lower body. When you watch Mitchell Trubisky, and you saw it back in his days at UNC, it's still prevalent with him now. That left foot, that front foot, he will step into the bucket. And I would go to quarterback books and, any manuals, things like this, and say, what is he doing wrong? And you look at every sort of coach says, look, when you're throwing the football as a right-handed quarterback, you want that left foot to be 3 or 4 inches left of the target line, right? Well, he's stepping into the bucket, stepping towards the sideline on some of these throws, and it impacts your ball placement and your performance and your accuracy. And as a guy that says, look, mechanics don't matter until they matter, as in if you can put the ball where it needs to be when it needs to be there, great. If you're not, and it's because of your mechanics, you got to fix them. Well, it's an issue with Trubisky. And so as I wrote my year-end report card on him, I said, look, if I'm Matt Nagy, I am sitting him down in my office at, One Hallis Place or whatever. I'm saying, look, man, first and foremost, I don't care what else you do this offseason. You got to fix that left foot. If you fix it, you could be great. You could be a very good quarterback in this league. If you don't, it is going to hold you back. And so I want to see that from him. If he comes out and fixes that left foot, he's going to be a well-rounded quarterback. If not, he is going to continue to struggle because you look at his passing chart. Arif Hassan first said it, and it seems to be true. He can't throw to his left. Why? Because of that left foot.
Sounds like me playing footy, Neil. Moving.
That's two references to you playing.
Okay.
I think we're done now.
Yeah, we are done. Yeah. I guess another team who've been okay at quarterback over the past I don't know 25 years. I think it feels like now. Anyways, that's the New England Patriots. I guess the question is, do you think they will look this year to start? I think we say this. I think we've said this every year, probably since about 2012. Do they start the process this year of getting someone in to be the long-term successor to Tom Brady, or are we just assuming that Tom Brady is basically, Connor McLeod from Highlander?
I think you have to. I mean, as much as Patriots fans want Tom Brady to live forever and want him to be the Highlander or want him to sort of play until he's 52, Father Time will eventually win. I mean, it's a simple fact of life. And so I think, look, New England over the Brady era has drafted a quarterback basically every other year, even though they've had him in place. They've seemed to always address that quarterback position. When they drafted Garoppolo, Belichick was asked about it. He basically said, look, we always want to be a year ahead of schedule rather than a year behind the schedule, because if you're a year behind schedule and you're scrambling to find a quarterback, you might be in a situation where you're either overpaying on the open market for a mediocre free agent, or you're trading up in the draft and expending a lot of draft capital to go get that guy, or you just have a lost season and you go 2-14 and hope you're picking in the top 5. Sometimes, you don't want to go 2-14. And so you try to be ahead of schedule on getting your next quarterback in. Yes, they drafted Danny Etling last year, but I think they are going to address it this year. They've got 12 picks. They've got 2 in the second round, 3 in the third. They've got the ammo to at least move up, maybe into the early second round if one of these guys falls. Maybe in the third round, if a Brett Rippon is there, they could go get him, who I think would be a good fit, or a Finley or one of these guys. I think they have to at least have an eye towards the future. The wild card in all of this is the Josh Rosen factor, because we're hearing that the Cardinals are meeting with Murray. Maybe they're just doing due diligence. Maybe there really is some interest there. And if Josh Rosen is available, one, he's a cost-controlled rookie quarterback that's going to cost you $6 million over the next 3 years. That is dirt cheap for a starting quarterback in the NFL. So that's issue number one. The Patriots can make that work with their cap situation. Issue number two is he might just cost you a second, or even we're here in third, and they've got seconds and thirds to burn. And if you're looking to sort of get a quarterback in to learn, but you might have to play him earlier than you hope because maybe Brady gets hurt, now you've got a guy that started basically his entire rookie season already. So you don't have to have those lumps. You can plug him in. Yeah, he's not going to replace 100% of Tom Brady, but he might do it better than, say, a Brett Rippon would, or Brian Hoyer would, or any of these other guys. And so if Josh Rosen is truly available, first of all, I think all other 31 teams should be calling about him because he's a cheap backup, if nothing else. But I think New England would want to get in on that.
Final, look, it's not so much a question, more like an open space for the two of you. Obviously, Mark, you're a fan of Newcastle. Main's been rumoured, follows Liverpool. So I just wondered whether you wanted to sit there and, swap love stories about Rafael Benitez for a couple of minutes before we close up.
Paul, I'll check to you. I mean, look, we just lost 2-0 to West Ham. I mean, I just... It's been a hard couple of years, Neil. It's been a hard couple of years. And for those of us Newcastle supporters that are still sort of waiting for the day that Mike Ashley finally moves on, it's just never seems to happen. I mean, I literally, before we hopped on, there's a guy I follow that has a Newcastle podcast who's out there tweeting about any truth to the rumors that Mike Ashley is finally going to sell the club. We've been seeing tweets like that for like 10 years now, ever since Passports with Pardue. and it just never seems to materialize. And until that happens, I can't get excited about this club. They'll have bits and spurts. I mean, they had a fantastic win earlier this year, but then they followed up with some just laying eggs, and it's tough. It's very tough.
It's not easy, I think Rafa Benitez is absolutely one of the greatest gluttons for punishment of all time. If we look at his ownership group, if I just give you 4 owners that he's been with, Hicks and Gillette, who are undoubtedly crooks and nearly brought Liverpool down to financial ruin. Florentino Perez is the Real Madrid owner. Wow, who wants any part of that? Massimo Moratti, the Inter Milan owner. Again, why the heck would you want any part of that? Yep. And then obviously the man, the myth, the sports direct buffoon, Mike Ashley. Rafa is, if you're on the red side of Liverpool, not many people will say a bad word against him now. There were some bad words said against him towards the end. I think those have gone. I wasn't necessarily one of those people. I still think, especially in a European event, give him a middling squad, and I'd take him any day to beat any team in a home game, and draw 0-0 in possibly one of the worst away games of all time. Been there, done that, seen it 25 times. I wish him all the best. But I'm with you. It's easy to look at other football clubs and think, thank God that's not me. And you, in that situation, Newcastle are one of them football clubs where you're just like, this guy needs to get out. We need someone who's going to do what they're supposed to do, and deal with the football club in the manner that it should be dealt with.
Yeah, it's made it frustrated, and what also made it frustrating for me, and this is more of a personal thing, but I bought a lot of Newcastle tops back a couple of years ago. With a Hatem Ben Arfa one, can't wear that anymore. Or a Johan Cabai one, can't wear that anymore. And it's not just because I've gained weight and I literally don't fit into them. It's just they get rid of these guys, and it's frustrating when you're trying to like piecemeal together a side, and then you're expecting Rafa to go out there and work miracles. It's just frustrating. I mean, I don't know if I told this story last year when I was on, but when I was in England, the year that they got relegated and Shearer was their, caretaker interim manager for a bit. I remember being at a Sports Direct in Piccadilly Circus, and I was trying on a Newcastle top. The kid that was working the dressing room was like, "Why? Like, why do you want to do this?" And I'm like, "It's my club." He's like, "Look at all the other shirts. Just go get another one, please. I can't let you walk out of here in this." Nope, I still got it in my closet because you support your club, but it's hard. And I mean, look, I'm a Patriots fan, so I can't really come here and gripe too much. I got a lot of good going on, but when it comes to the football, the true football, it's a bit tough.
That's where I'm, in a similar situation. Although Liverpool not as successful as the Patriots in recent times, but when you look in the cupboard and you're like, oh look, there's that Robert Griffin III Washington Redskins T-shirt that I got in 2015 when I thought I'll be able to wear this for 20 years, right. And now I hide it at the bottom of the cupboard.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, as always, thanks a lot for your time. Really appreciate it. And we look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Of course, guys. Paul, Neil, always a blast to be on with you. Fine, gentlemen. Thanks for staying up a bit late with me. Appreciate that. And have a fantastic draft season, guys. Look forward to talking again.
Neil, the brilliant Mark Schofield there, talking a lot of sense on quarterbacks. Get me all nostalgic about Mark Rippon and Rafa Benitez. What a guy.
Well, it's a joy listening to anyone who knows what they're talking about and also is enthusiastic about what they're talking about. And quarterbacks, it's with Mark, it's just quarterbacks, and I'm sure he'd still be talking now. Yeah, just let him go. We're idiots, the pair of us. Yeah, we know nothing. We know what we see, but if we just say just enough, and then he can go, then ultimately we all win, and especially we win because we're the ones who want to talk to him. So if other people are listening, that's great.
Exactly, and I think the rest of next season, and especially the pre-season, I'll be staring constantly at Mitchell Trubisky's left foot.
See, that's it. All we know is he looks bad, but now we've got actually something to look at and say that's why it's bad.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
Exactly. Right. It's a long show, 1 hour 10 minutes coming up on, so we're gonna let everyone go. I am at Mandy7. Neil is at ndutton13. Combined, we are at waxing_lyrical. Neil, anything to plug this week before we go?
This week, as I say, I've written a few things for a number of different sites over the last few weeks. I've written a piece about 3 players who won free agency just by the fact that their teams did nothing. That's on Player Profiler. I have pieces that I wrote for Numberfire about who will draft Dwayne Haskins, so that's quite topical. I've also written something for Numberfire about why Kyler Murray's height really doesn't matter. So go to Numberfire, type them in, check them out. Go to Player Profiler, check that out. And it's all good.
And that is us done, and these top guys are out.